There you are, Angus.
There I am.
Okay, welcome, and there you go.
Hey, Sean. No, you guys look like you're still busy talking to Commander, so I was like, just figured I'd log off and log in again.
Okay,
No
great.
problem.
Sean, why don't you start off and introduce, and we'll take it from there, okay?
Sure. Angus and I go back a long way. I remember with the original Hana Coalition Maui in 2002, when Angus first ran. We had long talks in Lahaina with Dad Lindsay as well as others, and I was part of that. So I've had 18 plus years to watch Angus run as well as be in the house. So there's a bit of understanding of that side, and I've also watched as he's matured over that period of time. So it's been an interesting ride. And first of all, we want to really thank you for being here, Angus. Most people don't understand how difficult it is to step forward and be part of a process. The legislature is made up of dozens of people who have to find ways to work together to get things done. Sometimes with compromise that goes against what you believe yourself in order to get other things done. It's an extraordinary three-dimensional chess game. And that's something it's difficult to transfer over or to be able to actually get over to people. So at the same time, when you're running, you have a record. You have everything is transparent to a certain extent. And there are things that are not transparent, which we're going to be asking you about today as well. So as you know, Angus, I'm not an easy person to be sitting in front of, nor the other folks here.
No, but
but we are really here to really find out who you are, what you stand for, and to allow you to really speak your truth. And so within that context, I'd like to start off asking a few questions if I could. First of all, out of your time that you've been a legislator, what is it that you would say would be your, and we have to keep these kind of short, like maybe a minute or so for each particular point. What would you say would be the greatest things that you've personally been able to get through the legislature in your time?
Well, there have been several. I think off the top of my head, it was Honolulu Bay. I mean, that was an opportunity that was none like any other. And to be able to go in and, use to educate my colleagues, to put together the different stakeholders, to get the governor to buy in, to basically get the legislature to see that we're not only going to save this incredible iconic piece of land, but we're also going to be able to save the pension fund, which was in danger of going belly up at the time for all the retirees. And also it was a way to show, we can actually save something. At the time, I remember Maui Land and Pine was in negotiations with some large offshore speculator developers to basically turn the place into private housing with no access at all. And so I knew that the time was now in which we had to try to secure this. And so that was one of the other ones. One of the ones which is actually seems kind of mundane now was getting Hawaii to be one of the few last states to allow people to have electronic proof of insurance cards when you drive around. I had to battle the bureaucracy of the DCCA. I had to battle all sorts of the insurance commissioner on why we couldn't join the 21st century and have something which in any other state, you can use. And so to me, it seems kind of a Manini thing, but it was a big one because so many times now people get pulled over and they're able to show that, insurance. The other thing too is, although it's been a slog, and I think the last phase, was could have been done a lot better, is to get the Lahaina bypass up and rolling, from where it was in the very beginning. It serves as an alternate conduit in and out of our community. And I think where things really came off the railing, though, is the idea that this should be our only way in and out of West Maui, instead of it being where your commercial high-speed visitor traffic should be relocated to, so we can preserve and protect our scenic byway and move that road away from the ocean, and hopefully return it to more of a living park concept, which has been discussed over the years. So that's just a few of the things, over the years I've done. And before the session got scuttled, I was working on trying to secure a CIP for the next phase of Villages of Leali'i. That was something that unfortunately got caught up in the quagmire. And I'm hoping when we go back that we'll be able to get that into the CIP bill that we were working on before the session ended. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, in 2018, there was an affordable housing bill, which basically took over $100 million and set it aside for affordable housing. Is that part of the CIP you're talking about? It's capital improvement projects. People have to know.
Yes, capital improvement projects. Yes, that was actually secured. Yeah, that money is secured for affordable housing. That money now just has to be expended. There were some opportunities.
Are we going to see? When are we going to see that here? We're desperate. When are we going to see that locally, as far as honest housing happening here on Maui? What are you doing to actually have that happen for?
Well, we got to get the administration, the Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corp, to pull down the money. They're actually moving forward with the county council. They're working with the council hand in hand because the council has to sign off. The permitting has to be done at the county council level. And that's why it's critical that the county be the tip of the spear, that they lead and say, okay, these are the projects, working with the community plan and working with the community that we want to see green lighted. We've lined up the money for them. So as soon as the permitting comes down, whether it's the new complex over by Keawe Street in Lahaina, whether it's the Star Noodle project, as it's been nicknamed, which would be a backfill project behind Star Noodle Restaurant. Those are two projects that have gotten county approvals moving forward so far, and we'll hopefully get them online. The other one is, of course, trying to help some of the nonprofit efforts that are going on. The Halio Maui is one that we will get funding for to try to finish off those units that were done, the infill units by Emerald Plaza right there. More needs to be pulled down. We did make counties money available to the Ohana Zone program. And unfortunately, the county whiffed on that one and didn't pull those monies down. So it's important that when the money is secured by the legislature, that the monies get pulled down, you're right, and get put to work right away. But we, at the same time, we got to remember there's a process for all these projects that we have to go through, an environmental process, a permitting process. And so that's the thing, is to try to expedite it through community support, but not end run any of the things that are put into law to protect our communities and our environment.
I appreciate that. One other question before I pass it on. We have a groundswell movement that's happening here to get a county Department of Agriculture. We feel we need to have our own future. We can't wait for the barges, which now are decreasing, as we've just had a special process where the barges have decided, they're just going to stop coming quite as much because they don't need to. So we're with 3 to 4 days worth of food here on the island, coming in from Oahu, coming in from other places. We're the final drip in the pipeline. Can you help, or what would you do as our legislator to work to help?
Well, I would support any enabling legislation for a county Department of Agriculture. The county is the closest subdivision of government to the people of Maui. I mean, so it makes sense to try to run a lot of these programs through a county entity. But to get on the shoebox about the barges, what's going on with Young Brothers, I'll use their name, insofar as having a for-profit entity being the only shipping lifeline for the neighbor islands is very scary. They continue to say that even with the rate increase, they're bleeding. They're going to lose $13 million this year. I'm advocating for the fact that this is one area where the government needs to take over and buy them out or take them over, because we are really in a precarious situation. And if they continue to, under this corporation for-profit model, continue to lose money, what's that to say in the future? Are we going to only be limited to one barge every 2 weeks? What about less than container load service, which all of our small local farmers really depend on? With the new temporary rate restrictions, scheduling changes that were put in place, caught a lot of people by surprise. A lot of local farmers showed up to Young Brothers to load up the containers and were told, nope, we're not taking them. You've got to take them back. There's no storage facilities on site for them at all. And so our farmers were caught really hard. A lot of our businesses, small businesses that are still operating, are caught really hard. And we need to recognize that we've got to try to make this a public model for public benefit. And we need a public shipper. So anyway.
I apologize, I'm taking a little more time than I'm supposed to, but this is really important. Would you be willing to work with the largest entity we have here, say Mahipono, to try to find places where we can have storage? We need to find places where we have cold storage and other things for our local farmers.
Definitely need
and
cold
places
storage,
where there are money outside, just get it done, instead of having to wait around.
Well,
this something you'd be willing to work with, or whoever?
I
It
will
doesn't make a
work with
difference.
anybody and everybody. I'm not going to compromise on the water, though. They need to know that. But I'm always been willing to work with them. I think one of the things I've been able to do through all these years is work with all the different stakeholders, entities to try to come to actual solutions. And this is what you're right. Without the cold storage, without the ability to be able to hold this cargo, if you have a restricted shipping, you're going to talk about spoilage and all sorts of logistical issues going down the line. That's going to really hit our community at a really horrible time right now. So, yeah, I'm definitely willing to sit down with Shan guys, or anybody, to work with them on, like-minded solutions. But at the same time, as I've shown in the past on some of my boats, they know where I stand on these issues. And so that's,
I think it's a matter of a lot of different things coming up for compromise now. Thank you for your time.
You bet.
Laura, do you have questions? I saw you raising your hands.
Hi. So,
Hello.
hi. So all these years we've been trying to we just talked about the affordable housing and the monies. I'm sorry.
Well,
No,
I
I
mean,
guess
just to really touch on the affordable housing thing, one of the things that needs to happen this year immediately because of COVID-19 is we have to look at preventing foreclosures. A next tsunami of foreclosures is coming down on people.
Yeah.
It's going to hit our affordable housing community dramatically. People who've gotten affordable housing could very well lose it. So we need to make sure that we shore up 667, the foreclosure chapter, prevent banks from foreclosing on people, especially those who finally got into affordable housing. So I'll just throw that out there only because we hit that juncture in the road.
Perfect.
Okay.
Paul, do you have questions?
Yes.
Do you have something that you wanted to put in?
Sure, I do. And as you just mentioned about water very briefly, I just have a question around that. And do you see a necessity for full financial disclosure and transparency for members of the Board of Land and Natural Resources and effectively make decisions involving hundreds of millions of dollars of natural resources and often to the benefit of private businesses? What would you do and what can you do, you feel, to rectify this issue and to address the way these resources are being controlled?
Well, yeah, we need full financial disclosure of those decision makers. I was the one who helped co-author and push through the bill that expanded the financial disclosure requirements to boards and commissions beyond, what was then just the legislative body and the executive branch of directors. Really, it is important that we see that we don't have, what really bothers me about the way resource decisions have been being made is they're basically being made to preempt decisions that have been won through public participation and court battles. I think there's a need for us to step in to make sure that the public trust doctrine, the fact that water is made available, I'm speaking to fresh water, obviously this goes for all of our resources. We need to make sure it's available and that we're not creating statutory carve-outs or entitlements for our precious resources through the law, which unfortunately the latest court decision that came down on the fresh water, I think legislatively we need to review that because there shouldn't be such a thing as continuous holdover permits, which is currently the case right now for freshwater allocation. But clearly the public role, public participation and disclosure in how resources are allocated is critical, especially given the fact that our water shortage problems are only going to be exacerbated as global warming continues to accelerate. I mean, and now more than ever, it's important the public knows that these resources will be made available not only for now, but for future generations.
Thank you. Daniel, do you have something that you'd like to ask?
Yes. Hey, aloha, Angus.
Hey.
I've seen you around a bit around the community, so it's good I'm so glad you could join us on this call today.
No, thanks for having me, you guys. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to put this together and talk story.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this question. As a public representative, it is a duty to face the truth and to act righteously. These islands reflect the lowest voter turnout in the United States. On May 15th, 2019, Dr. David Keanu Sai gave a presentation to the Maui County Council. evidencing the illegal overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani in 1893 and showing a clear violation of domestic and international law with the ongoing illegal United States military occupation of the Kingdom of the Hawaiian Islands. As a candidate for public representation, how do you rectify handling the truth of Dr. Tsai's presentation, as well as the works of Keamoku Kapu, Henry Noah, Amelia Gora, Bumpy Kanahele, Leon Su, Dr. Josias, Madame Ruth Bolame, the Ko Hawaii Pai Aina office in Hilo, etc.? How do you rectify the compliance of the law in restoration of occupied lands?
Well, I've been very lucky to work with Keamoku, you know, and also Bumpy on the Bank of America issue where the Native Hawaiians basically got taken to the cleaners and were lied to by Bank of America and for us mortgages for homes go. We need to make sure, I guess, and my whole thing is, you know, we need the wisdom of our Native Hawaiian community to lead the way. You know, we are only here because of the trust and faith of the people of Hawaii. And, you know, it's, who am I to tell the Native Hawaiian people how things should be rectified? I stand ready to help and support them any way I can, just like I did when I took very unpopular positions in supporting Native Hawaiian communities back when we had bills before the legislature that would have pretty much put them in a bad stead. There have been bills that we worked on to try to stop the quiet title actions that have been occurring against Native Hawaiian families. And I was really stoked to see the victory Keamoku guys got against the land company who are trying to basically use quiet title to force them off the land. We need to make sure that legal mechanisms that do exist now are strengthened so that we can not only right what has happened, right the wrongs, but prevent them from continuing to occur, especially with all of this large outside money that has been flooding into Hawaii and will continue to flood in the future that could be used and is being used to displace people from their homes and their lands. So I'm merely one who's just trying to work with the Native Hawaiian community to help them. Sorry, it's a very emotional issue for me because it's been years and years and years that you see that people have been getting the shaft, so to speak. And, you know, I think that's why working with Keamoku guys on some of these quiet title bills, on working with the Native Hawaiian community has been partly to me one of the areas where I've been given most personal gratification. But a lot has to be done, and I just stand ready to help in any way I can. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, mahalo, Angus. I'm going to pass on the question to another, and I'll come back with another.
Okay, thank you. You can tell I'm very nervous.
John, you have to unmute.
I'm very nervous right now. Let the record reflect.
Sorry. Yeah, with good reason. You know, it takes a lot.
I know you guys. Just like to be more relaxed.
I was going to.
Zoom kind of makes it a little bit.
It's all good. It's all good.
Oh, man.
But just one second. Sylvia, I'm going to let Tommy go first, and then if you don't mind, and then I'll come back to you if that's all right. Tommy, would you lead off?
Sure. Angus.
Hey, Tommy, what's up?
Nice to see you, my friend.
You too, man.
Is that your Zoom background, or is that
yeah,
from
you
the
like
house?
it?
But it's a picture from the house, right?
Yeah, it's a picture from the house we took. My mom, if we pan back, she was actually on the right side, but I'm like, you got to scooch.
Don't crop mom out. Come on, that'd be perfect.
I will. I'll get the photo of me and mom in there.
I want to see it reformatted next time. All right.
You got it, sir.
Nice to see the work that you've done for Maui and West and South Maui are your districts. Right? I've got a, we've been, you and I have actually had this discussion for decades at one particular agency in Maui County. And my question is, around Maui Liquor Commission, and we know there's such a we know
where do you want me to begin?
I actually have a place for you to begin. All right. So they're a mess, to put it lightly. It's been a generational mess, right? And it hasn't got better. It's only got worse, right? After when you cut the leadership off and you don't let the next boss take the seat, and they fought over that for a while, and it's just really been kind of a mess lately. They put themselves in the hot seat recently with Maui Brewing Company.
Mm-hmm.
And we know they've been the problem child for every county administration. And so my question is on the state side. Are you aware of a path a realistic path to restructuring the Maui Liquor Commission to fall under the state's responsibility? And if so, would you support it?
Oh, yes. Well, I've actually co-authored and passed bills, statewide laws of general applicability to rein in the Maui Liquor Commission. I mean, for instance, the bill that allows people to dance in bars. Remember that?
Yeah.
Measure. I mean, we had to pass a state law because the Maui Liquor Commission had all these arcane and very arbitrary rules on dancing in restaurants and bars. We clearly need, and this fiasco with Garrett just underscores it again, really hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
And what gets me is the mayor under his emergency proclamations, because it's an ordinance, could have suspended that, because what he's doing is clearly addressing the public health issue. But that aside, the dysfunctionality of this commission and the refusal of, the administration to rein them in warrants the need to have a statewide liquor commission that would potentially oversee the Maui Commission, provide that check that doesn't exist right now. I think we would need to do it with DCCA. The irony is the other liquor commissions are like, hey, we don't have these problems where we're at. Why is Maui
right? So
that's
the big question. So how can the state just take Maui and not the other counties?
We would have to take the other counties and work with them. The idea would be create a structure whereby basically bad actors could have a check from a statewide level going on, but yet the other counties would have the autonomy to be able to run their various rules and programs. There is a need, though, for uniformity. Let's take server training, for instance. It is an absolute fiasco if you're a server in one liquor commission in a district, say Honolulu or Kauai, and you got to go to, if you go to Maui or the Big Island, the standards are different, even though the procedures and rules and the protocols are the same for every bar, everybody operating servers. This is one area where clearly to have statewide coordination through server training and standards of interoperability, so people can know if I work in Honolulu, I can go to Maui and get my server card is still good. Don't have these new rules and twists and turns in the road, so to speak. It gives business better guidance, and it gives them a level of appeal that takes it out of local politics. So yeah, I think I'm going to put a bill in. If the voters support me, and I am lucky enough to return with the blessing of the community, it is something that's on the top burner. Garrett and I have discussed it theoretically, but I think all of this shows that we have to throw down and put the ideas on paper and have this discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great. And thanks, Tommy. Okay, Sylvia, you have a question? You have to unmute. Hey, you have to unmute. Sylvia, you've got to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Aloha, Angus. Thank you for coming.
How's it? Thank you.
There's been a lot of talk about, thanks, a lot of talk about subsidizing farming on Maui. And the more I think about that, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm just thinking, wow, that would make a great difference to local organic farmers. And I would hope that we could get subsidizing for local organic, and also just that it's not profitable to run a farm, so it needs to be doable so that we can have food sustainability and independence. So please help me understand what is the process that would need to happen for that kind of subsidizing, and is that a bill that you would be wanting to introduce, or is somebody doing that now? And is that a job for the state legislature?
Yeah, actually, former Representative Jessica Woolley, when she was in the House, she and I did a bill together. We nicknamed it the Combined Hawaii Organic Agricultural Mobilization Measure. And one of it was to bolster local ag, in particular organic ag, by creating a subsidy program for farmers. If farmers can be subsidized, then they can produce crops at a profit and take care of their families and still offer them for sale less than the bulk produce that's coming in that you see at the big box stores. The thing is that, if local farmers have a way to offset a lot of these costs, they can sell them at a price that's affordable for the community. The people will say, okay, I can go ahead and I'll buy local organic because I can stretch my dollar and support local businesses and eat healthier. And so the idea originally, we were going to run it through the Department of Agriculture. I think this could be a very good project with enabling legislation for a future county Department of Agriculture. Unfortunately, the bill didn't make it past the Senate. I'm very happy to bring it back again. And I think we need to have this conversation because now more than ever, we need to accelerate sustainability because, as to the point made earlier, as stuff starts drying up, as the shipping and supply lines start breaking down, which they already are, we need to invest our resources into local ag and making sure that farmers can farm for the market and that people, the consumers, can be able to afford the prices. That's how I see a subsidy program working, but I definitely want to bring it back again next session. And I mean, the most disheartening thing is what I'm seeing going on with farmers are having to literally plow under crops right now into the ground. I mean, somebody's put a photo up on Facebook the other day of just mounds and mounds of produce, like just mountains, if you will, just rotting in the sun. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, we need to seriously put on the table, since we're talking about a new world, a new normal, we have to put on the table serious efforts to create a subsidy program for our local farmers so that they can farm and make farming their full-time, you know, occupation. Farming is tough. I mean, that's the thing. I totally understand that. You know, I've done it myself, pretty half-assed, to be honest with you. I mean, but it's a tough business and there's a lot of uncertainty. And, you know, there's got to be a way to subsidize these costs and also to help with some of these federal mandates like Food Safety Act, for instance. One of the things we're working on real quickly on the way to get organic foods to the marketplace is through the Food Hub program. It was one of the bills that unfortunately died because of the COVID-19 interruption, but we're working with Vince and the Farmers Union on expanding, not only funding the present Food Hub programs, but expanding the Food Hub locations. And we see that as a natural pathway to help on the delivery side, in addition to a subsidy program directly aimed at the farmers themselves. So we got to get the Food Hub thing back on the table, no pun intended. And again, the subsidy idea is one with your help we can really push over the finish line, whether it's through the State Department of Ag or better yet, as was alluded to earlier, through a county entity.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for your answer. You mentioned, you know, there's going to be a new normal now and how our priorities are shuffling, and such as the food security issues are coming to the top of our priorities. What other issues do you see that we could take this as an opportunity to make progress with while people are really having this new mindset?
I think there is one is to truly start to transform our economy because we have no choice but to do it. And the second thing is to address the overpopulation of visitors that were inundating our islands. I mean, we were literally going 30 to 40,000 people a day coming in. It was, you know, just a massive amount of people that was straining our infrastructure, that was driving up prices on the grocery store, everything. Now we have a chance to remake our economy and to create a sustainable economy and to encourage a green economy. And that's where I see that we got to put our resources to. I mean, a lot of businesses are going to unfortunately, they're going to close. They're going to be by June, when the payroll protection plan runs out and there's no support for people who are currently employed right now, they're going to be laid off. And so we as a state have to figure out a way to transform now. And the Green New Deal, the time is now for a Green New Deal. And working out those specifics is really going to be the hard part. Time is no longer a luxury. It never was really a luxury at all. We've been behind the 8 ball. Now we're really behind the 8 ball. So we have to sit down and figure out, okay, what can we do to diversify our economy and not become, once again, over-reliant on tourism and not have a model of economy that's based upon 30 to 40,000 people coming in every week. You know, I mean, the one good thing about this, I guess, is all those rental cars you see parked out in the fields is going to go back to the mainland. I mean, you have an ability to create walkable, livable, bikeable communities. I mean, I think a lot of opportunity actually rests on the county level. through their power of zoning, especially, to remake and address a lot of the problems, whether they're the rampant expansion of Airbnbs, whether it's trying to put a rein on, some of the cruise ships, for instance, the cruise ship traffic and the impacts they were having on the community. A lot of this can be done with the help of the county. So now more than ever, it's really important that we at the state level have got to work hand in glove with the county, especially our county council people who are there battling away right now. I hope that helps answer your question, but clearly the new normal is paving a way for us to have to grapple with all of these issues here and now. We can't just keep kicking the can down the road. And, I stand ready to introduce any bill and to work to secure whatever funding is necessary, but we've got to have our county council people there with us, especially since we don't want it to continue to have top down, And anyway, sorry, I'll leave it there.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. I do want to jump in for just 1 second because something that's really been bugging me. I'm working with Councilmember King on the Climate Action Committee, and here in the state, if you drive a hybrid here locally, you get a $50 a year penalty for driving a hybrid and a $100 a year penalty for driving an electric car. Our entire electric infrastructure here on Maui was kind of a backwater experiment that the majority of our charging systems have fallen apart. There's nothing here really as an infrastructure for electric. So 2 points. One is anything that can be done on the legislative side to actually allow hybrids and electrics to have a non-pejorative input, because we're not using enough oil, we're not getting the revenues off of it, therefore there's a pejorative charge. The second thing is that we desperately need an infrastructure that allows us to start using the renewable energy that we're bringing in at a spectacular rate. We have a PUC that's pushed quite extraordinarily to ensure that Maui has a renewable future. This is something a lot of people don't know about, but this is the most radical PUC we've ever had regarding renewables. So what can be done on the state level to help, and now that we're getting rid of all these fossil fuel cars by the tens of thousands, is there a possibility of putting something through that when these companies come back on board to bring things back, that they actually have to bring back, electric cars or hybrid cars? And in doing so, they just spent $200+ million to build that behemoth of a concrete dinosaur including internal fuel pumps and whatever, yet not one penny for electric. So what do we do to you see where I'm going with this? What can we do? About changing the infrastructure. So in a couple of minutes, is there, this is what's under discussion.
I'm very proud to be a member of the Environmental Caucus for the House and also for the National Conference of State Legislatures, where we get to work with our counterparts on issues exactly like that. We need to look at, right now, Rep. Lowen and I and the other lawmakers, along with Rep. Lee, we're looking at what can we put into place so that when rental cars, when they bring them back, that they're a hybrid, that they're green and they're not impactful on our carbon economy. And also we need to look at, like you said, modernizing our infrastructure so that we can have more charging stations and they're renewable based. These on the state level is really going to be a policy of taxation and regulation. Insofar as boots on the ground, I think that's where Councilmember King's work and the county council's work is going to be important to try to expedite those stations from being put in through the zoning permitting process, and trying to also hold the line on some of the standards or benchmarks that we put in for charging stations have been rolled back because entities said, oh, we can't do it, it's too hard. We can't put in this many charging stations at all. We need an exemption. We need from the law, rather than us saying, okay, we need to accelerate the amount of charging stations available, and we need to not simply just keep pushing back these mandates meant to create more charging stations, an opportunity for people who have cars to be able to use them. So rental car side, it's important we as a state put policies into effect. I think we could look at the fee structure like we did with taxing rental cars for the bypass, for the Paia bypass as well as the Lahaina one. We can use that mechanism, I believe, as a way to incentivize the rental companies to be bringing in a green fleet so that when visitors do come back, they're using cars that aren't simply exasperating carbon emissions and also creating all those problems, worldwide with climate change. But you can see right down here on the road, it's underwater.
Thank you. Yeah, really. Thank you, Angus. And also for the people that have the cars now and are buying them, to stop the pejorative side of doing it. So
there were some good bills. Nicole had some good bills that we were working on this year. And unfortunately, there were a lot of good bills on the environmental front that got caught a virus, for lack of a better word, and died. And we're going back in for trauma work on May 11th to address the budget issues. We're going to slash special funds. We're going to lapse unencumbered special funds, and we're going to try to put $1 billion into the rainy day fund over the $300 million we have now, as well as keep unemployment benefits going and shore up human service benefits as well. But then in June, we're hoping to come back and look at some of the bills that were stalled during session. So I'm hoping some of the bills we talked about today are going to be back in the discussion. That's what I'm hoping we can make happen.
Thank you, Angus. Paul, you have a question?
Yes, Angus, hi. My question's around education. I mean, when I look at kind of this Oahu-centric system that we have of education, it seems like a lot of the monies that come from Maui go to Oahu, and then very little seems to come back, or not as much come back. And as a result, a lot of the schools that have been supposed to be worked on and developed and built are not. And we have a lot of our teachers who are having difficulty financially. How would you address this? And would you support having an audit of our education system?
Oh yeah, I've actually did several resos, co-signed them, co-introduced them to audit the Department of Education. The Department of Education is a huge behemoth, a Honolulu behemoth. One of the things that really hurt the neighbor islanders was when the mostly Oahu voters, because it would have failed, it was basically took away an elected Board of Education and made it appointed, answering to the governor only. Then on top of that, you have the fact that the Department of Education can't seem to get out of its own way. And we secured a lot of money for education facilities for Maui in particular that have basically languished because they haven't been able to execute the contracts. The biggest waste of money that I've seen for the DOE was we got them $100 million in cash for air conditioners, in cash now, not bond money, cash money, and they completely blew it. And did not encumber the monies, did not work with the contractors to go ahead and do the electrical upgrades and everything needed to bring the ACs. Many of the ACs were going to be powered by photovoltaic, which was one of the provisos in there. And as a result, all of that money didn't get used. And so this is why we've got to try to rein in the Department of Education insofar as getting the resources we give to them and actually put them into work in our communities and getting these projects done. And then the second thing of all, it says to the teachers themselves, they've been needing a pay raise for a long time. And as I told them before, if Governor Ige and the teachers come up with a collective bargaining agreement that will truly pay teachers the living wage they deserve and need, then I will vote for it every single time. I mean, this gives me another segue here, if I may, in that the 20% cut of teachers' salaries and other salaries as proposed by the governor is one of the reasons why we're going to go back in, because clearly that's not the plan to be able to stabilize the financial situation, and protect our communities. So in order to get that off the table, we're going back to basically shore up a lot of these special funds that exist, particularly in, the DCCA, that could be lapsed or overflowing and could be brought back into the general fund for programs like this to offset cuts that are being proposed to teachers in our educational facilities. We need to accelerate long distance learning because that is part of the new normal. One of the problems we're having with the DOE is getting hardware in the hands of not only the teachers, but the students as well as creating a system of accountability when we do long distance education beyond enrichment. And then finally, we need to make sure that the teachers, and we're working with some groups from the mainland who are trying to get this going, have the training to do, to use the software that's being unrolled so that they can go ahead and adequately and, thoroughly be able to engage your students, while they're doing long distance learning. So those are some of the ideas that we have, but clearly the frustrations of the DOE are something that is on my mind quite a bit. As I roll my eyes.
Yeah. Thank you.
So-
Bruce, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on this. In terms of them, the percentage of monies that go towards education, how much of that money is being used for administrative costs versus actual payment for teachers and infrastructure? And why has the audit been stopped in the past from your bill?
Yeah, the audit was, the thing about the audit is the auditor only does 10 audits a year. And the auditor responds to the governor. And the auditor keeps sidestepping doing an audit of the Department of Education. So we're going to obviously keep bringing this thing back over and over again like we have in the past to get it done. Infrastructure, they need an audit on the infrastructure side as to why they can't perform the contracts and get the projects done that we allocate bond money for. And then on the management side, you're right, the administrative costs of the DOE are, staggering, the layers of bureaucracy. You have several layers above the principals and the teachers that they have to navigate, and it's all in Oahu. And so one of the ideas I challenge my friends and teachers and stuff is we need to look at a governance system, perhaps an administration system, besides an elected school board, that puts more power back at the local level, especially in the hands of the principals and themselves who work with the teachers to make sure our campuses are safe and function. And the dystopia that is the state of Hawaii. Was that my loud voice? Sorry.
Sorry, no, it was me. I was supposed to be muted, but
no. I'm like, is that my loud voice? It's like,
no.
yeah. I mean, over the years, I've become, I've seen the bureaucracy in all of its flamboyancy, and it is frustrating. It is what drives me every day to go into the Hanazuzu and basically unite with all the good people like yourselves, with stakeholders, and try to get outside the box, is because you just see so much that goes to the quagmire of the bureaucracy. It's just frustrating. But I'm like, I know we can have little victories, but we need big victories, but we can have them working together. But that's the battle. And we've been successful. We've had some wins. But then you look at the air conditioning thing and you're like, we've got $100 million of cash for ACs that our kids desperately need. And it ends up getting botched in the DOE procurement system, contracting system. And so I think hopefully we can, I'm going to keep pushing for a Con Am to repeal the appointed school board, because back in the day when we had our Maui elected, board of education member, you could go to them. You could go to them and say, this is what's going on in Lahaina Luna, or this is what's going on in with King K. And they would go to the board level. They would go to the administration level and be that advocate. And now it's just a giant stamp of rubber.
We hear you, Angus. We definitely hear you. And we got to move on.
Have a rubber.
So, yeah, you're preaching to the choir. So Bruce, you have a question?
Yeah, Angus, you had quite a thing with the injection wells here on Maui.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know, what were your motivations going into it? What do you think the accomplishment was, and what did you learn from the whole process?
I came into it with 30 years of history. I came into it. I got, I used to surf that place, and anecdotal evidence, see all the seaweed that was starting to explode there, especially the kind that didn't exist there before. All the green lettuce seaweed was disappearing because of all of this red algae seaweed that was exploding everywhere. Worked for Lahaina News, was writing stories on the studies were being done, were being funded, that were coming back with the increased nitrogen load these injection wells were putting into our nearshore waters. When I was a legislator and we had ARA monies made available to us by President Obama, one of the things the county then said as to why they needed federal monies through the wastewater revolving fund was the Lahaina injection well plant. We need the money so we can come into compliance to stop using injection wells, because the EPA is saying we have to stop using this as a primary effluent disposal, and we have to come under the Clean Water Act. Well, they didn't use it. They took the money and shifted it elsewhere. And I love now how Monday morning quarterbacking. They're basically saying, oh, well, we never intended to fix Lahaina wastewater injection well. I call shabai to that, because that's one of the reasons why behind the scenes I was lobbying so hard with the money committees to get ARA monies to the county of Maui, was for that situation right there. So when I saw that the mayor was going to take this all the way up to the Supreme Court and give Trump a potential victory to step on the Clean Water Act, not only in Lahaina, but all over the United States, I cried foul. And both personally and as a state representative, you know, I cried foul on that. I mean, now they're trying to claim that what they're putting into the nearshore waters isn't a pollutant. Newsflash, nitrogen loading is a pollutant. This is why the Clean Water Act has been applied to all of the Great Lakes areas where you have the great dairy farms in the Midwest. And so to continue to fight this and spend monies on lawyers instead of coming into compliance 30 years ago. I mean, one of the justices in the opinion even said, the EPA's position for 30 years, Republican or Democrat, has been, you guys are pumping nitrogen-rich waters into the nearshore waters vis-a-vis this effluent flow through the sediment. So you need a Clean Water Act permits. And the Safe Water Drinking Act is not the standard to be used, because even though it may be safe to, quote, drink the injection well water, the nitrogen load that is occurring and the effect it's having on the reef and the marine environment is unmistakable. And so, I mean, I've learned a lot about, you know, case law, precedent, Clean Water Act. I've also found out that the feds have repeatedly made available to the county of Maui no low interest, now no interest loans, millions and millions of dollars that could have been used to expand the R3 at Lahaina and stop the injection wells from being a primary disposer. And they've not applied for any of it. Zero. Big fat zero. So my challenge in using this forum as a challenge to the county of Maui is, now that these very same loans, millions of dollars, are still available at 0% interest, why aren't you pulling them down to basically fix the problem once and for all in Lahaina and expand R3 to the reservoir system so that we can have it available not only for potential ag uses and ground cover, but also for firefighting and public safety needs. Sorry, I get fired up about this issue because this has been one that, you know, for many years I've been dealing with. It just pisses me off that we're continuing to spend money on Washington, D.C. attorneys instead of money that could go back into our communities, instead of fixing what the EPA for 30 years has said. I mean, Bush 1 EPA said, you guys got to fix it. Bush 2 EPA said, you guys got to fix it, you know. Now only the county of Maui is saying, no, we're going to fight this in court. And the person who wins from this is the Trump administration, the Republican Party, and their quest to unravel the Clean Water Act nationally. I mean, I'm sorry, that to me is the profound echo of the Lahaina wastewater treatment case, is that this could have been used and was being used to undermine protections for all of our communities and our right to know all over the place. So.
Well, thanks, Angus. I think that the reflective quality there is something that we're all in alliance with. I was quite concerned when I saw our mayor meeting with Mr. Trump, you know, before, at our expense. We actually paid $35,000 for him to fly to watch something and then meet with Trump on top of that. It was pretty astounding to me. So I'll get off my soapbox. Laura, you had a question?
Well, wait a minute. I just want to make sure that Bruce, you are complete before we move on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my phone.
Angus,
Yes.
Continuing on that other question, even a bigger offender is the Kahalui wastewater. It's right on the ocean. It uses injection wells, and it even has a greater quantity of effluent than Lahaina. So how would you apply this victory with that?
I think that that's another plan. Yeah, they should all be brought under the Clean Water Act. They all should be pulling non-point source permits to basically to test the nitrogen levels that are being introduced through the sediment by the use of injection wells. What worries me about taking this back to the district court is that Lahaina injection well was used as the poster child by the Supreme Court in the decision for a new test. By taking this back to the district court and trying to re-argue this thing under the new test, you're almost saying injection wells are going to be the future, present, and future standard for wastewater treatment in Maui County. And that's what's bothersome. I mean, they're supposed to be emergency stormwater devices. I mean, the history of why they came online and were used so expansively was the fact that you had all of these timeshares popping up on North Beach, much of the chagrin of Patsy Mink, who was trying to make that an open space. And now you have their use potentially expanding in other areas, and the harm that can occur is very real. We've seen the test to prove it. So why not work with the EPA and the State Department of Health to come under compliance with the Clean Water Act, which at the end of the day, it's about us knowing. It's a knowledge thing. It's about disclosure, so we know what's going into our nearshore and marine environment. And I think Lahaina, Kahalui, yeah, you're right. It's a much bigger use of them, but what's happening in Lahaina is probably happening there, and it's only going to get worse and worse. And, you know,
Okay.
it's no poo in 2022.
Good, good. And there's a final question on this. We have a one-party system in this state. We're a Democratic Party, which makes us about as much sense as a Communist Party when you're a one-party system, where unelected party officials are basically calling the shots at the state level, which is the source of a corruption. How would you feel, just like the counties have eliminated partisan politics in the county level, how would you feel about eliminating that on the state level in a constitutional convention?
Well, I think it's pretty much been eliminated already. I mean, what the Republicans caucus with the Democrats all the time. I mean, I think to me, though, even it's nonpartisan, which I'm fine with. I mean, I run as a Democrat because I believe in the principles of being a Democrat. I believe in social justice. I believe in the fact that all of us have a unique diversity that makes America stronger. We should be throwing people into camps who are trying to make their lives better. We shouldn't be throwing people out of the country because simply that they're here working hard like everybody else. We shouldn't be giving in to xenophobic politics. And that's why I run, and I'm a Democrat, and I'm proud to be a Democrat. And I think it says a lot about a candidate if you're a Democrat, also as it is when you're a Republican. Because clearly Mr. Trump has outlined the parameters and principles of the Republican Party. And now more than ever, being a strong Democrat and standing up for what are the values and beliefs that I remember from back in the day, from as a kid and to now, that I cherish is so special. I mean, that's why I'm proud to be a Democrat. And I'll run as a Democrat, even if the ledger is a nonpartisan one, because it's about social justice and putting people first, working people first.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So Daniel, you're up. And we have about 5 or 6 minutes before we have to wrap it up. On Tommy, okay. And we'll follow it up with Tommy if you've got anything as one of the finals, Tommy. You good? Okay, go ahead, Daniel. Okay. You got about 3 or 4 minutes.
So, as part of the accomplishments that you have mentioned before, blessings for Honolulu Bay. That was quite a save. You know, that land is very beautiful. I know there was a lot of people in the community to look to make that happen. So, when it comes to saving the land, and then you mentioned as well as people's pension funds, you know, often it seems that to come down to the protection of land or the profit of pockets per se. Now, when you know, I hear a lot of the things that you mentioned as far as what to do with economic recovery in this, like subsidizing the farmings, that the shipping supplies are drying up, and even, you know, which bills that could have helped this situation, like the food hub program that got sort of stopped in the midst of all this COVID situation. Let's see. So we have this thing about transparency. Just kind of going over some of the things that you had mentioned here, because my question regarding economic recovery in these times, as far as what the state is doing, things on the lack of transparency, and, you know, definitely needing the transparency, like the beast of some of these behemoth departments, like Department of Education, and the auditors not standing up to the task. So we also, you know, we obviously have an issue when it comes to the economy in general in the moment, and then on top of that, economic recovery after a COVID situation. There is no free lunch, so all of these all of these this $1,200 tax thing that everybody's getting. You know, we really have to look at these impacts. So as far as any sort of economic recovery that the state is currently working on, you know, we like definitely looking to get the
Daniel, wrap it up and let him answer the question. You're rambling, dude.
The
Sorry.
sun is.
what is it?
There you go.
Okay, so
There you go.
that's what I'm looking at is like, what is the economic recovery that you can mention for us? What can you share with us?
Well, things are, you know, slowly opening back up again. I think any recovery is going to have to be about creating a local strengthening our local economy. So we locals going to local businesses is going to be the first step to recovery. I mean, showing that we are not having any outside reintroduction of COVID-19 by shutting down the airports and keeping the quarantines in place, so that we can ensure that we don't have a second wave or a third wave like we did with the Spanish influenza. We're relying on the federal government for a lot of help. There's a lot of places where this the great thing about the COVID-19 challenges, a lot of sacred cows, the issue of transparency that were sacred, whether they're special funds, whether they're positions that were basically occupying money where nobody was actually working them. All of that is finally being put to the chopping block. And the hard questions on all of these things created, as well as some of the general excise tax exemptions which exist. They're not fair to everybody else who's paying them, yet certain groups and entities get exempted from them. You know, these are all the things that need to be laid bare insofar as trying to create the revenue necessary to support investing in our local entities. And I'm an unabashed protectionist. When you live in an island community, it is important that we use public resources to put it back to work in the local community. And we protect our locals from the shock of high prices, of predatory behaviors, as well as outside investment. But yeah, in the short term, we're relying on the federal government for help, for capital. I think we also have to look at our own books, which we're doing, and a lot of conversations which were pushed to the side are now being put on the table, which is healthy and long overdue, insofar as trying to give people the resources they need. Because that's, I mean, when June comes and the Payroll Protection Act ends, a lot of people who are being still employed by their company right now are going to get layoff notices. So we're sitting down with the Department of Human Services going, look, we need to funnel relief to the human services to these people because we can't simply turn our back on them. We're going to have to provide a buffer so that as we transform our economy and certain businesses sunset and new ones need to be created, that people have the ability to have money in their pocket. We can forestall actions of eviction and also work to forestall actions of the banks for foreclosures so that people have money in their pocket, they have a roof over their head, and they can go out as we open businesses back up again, you know, like whether it's, you know, the retail and the restaurants. I believe what the restaurants are putting forward and how to do social distancing to open their doors. So we in the local community can go and patronize them again. And, you know, then people can start to work again. And that's the way we're slowly going to crawl out of this. But we're going to have to look to the federal government. And I think we have to have a real tough conversations, you know, about the fact that we may have to deficit spend for the first time in the history of our state. Do we borrow from tomorrow to pay for today is the question that's going to be coming up the next couple of months. But that's what's so great about the election process and the involvements by groups like Maui Pono Network is that we can have these conversations and get them going in the community because we're entering very uncharted waters right now. And what I've just tried to hit on very briefly are some of the things that we're trying to do as this new reality kind of coalesces.
I hear you. And there's another question that, as a follow-up with that, the Department of Health is antique. Everything they do there is run off 1980s, it's ridiculous. How are you in the legislature going to be able to bring the Department of Health up to the place where we're going to be able to have tracing, to be able to tell when people come in? Where is the money and what is your time frame that we're looking at so that the economy can open back up to a certain extent, and we can also just ensure our own personal safety here? What are you?
Contact tracing is critical. We have been banging on them this week. We just had a caucus today about the fact that the Department of Health is dropping the ball on stepping up the contact tracing division. They're not hiring or reallocating positions from other positions that are sitting dormant into contact tracing. You've got Department of Health people who are basically work at home in limbo who could be used for contact tracing personnel staffing who are not being pulled over there. I think that the Department of Health also does too many things under its umbrella. We need a state EPA, for lack of a better word. I've always thought that environmental programs and management, all of that should be under its own agency, which would free up Department of Health resources for public health where it belongs. I won't even go into my battle about dealing with clean drinking water.
Let's keep it,
environmental
just a second, Angus, we've literally got 2 or 3 minutes. I don't want to keep it,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it very succinct to how do we get the state back up? How do we make sure that we're safe with the people around us? We know that somehow things are going to have to get checked. The Department of Health is not working in 60 seconds or less. What is it that you're
60
doing?
seconds real quickly. We ramp up with social distancing. We put the force of law and positions into contact tracing. We look at third-party quarantine insofar as quarantine, hostels for people who are coming, so they actually do stay for the 14-day quarantine. And the biggest thing is we work with the 3 big mainland West Coast states, which are the driver for Maui of all of our visitor and outside traffic, to make sure that they're doing things on their end, like pre-testing, like contact tracing on their end, so that people are tested coming and going into Hawaii, kind of like Australia and New Zealand are doing, to create a closed bubble, if you will.
Thank you so much, Angus. We really do appreciate you coming today and also giving us the insight of what's going on the state level. We're hungry here. We don't get much here locally as far as what's really going on in Oahu. And we do appreciate your bringing that.
I'm an open book. As Albert Perez will tell you, sometimes I'm too much of an open book, but I'm willing to, I'm able to answer any question I can, talk story with anybody I have. I appreciate you guys putting this together. I'm always available for future stuff. I'm always trying to up my game as so far as keeping contact with the community using social media. Any question, anything, please feel free. I mean, a lot of what we've been doing is helping our people dealing with the broken UI system. I'm talking about broken government right now, and helping to make sure. It's heartbreaking to see the fact that people are not getting the help they need. And without the great food drives and stuff going on in the community, they're literally starving.